All right, let's dive right into this explainer. What if I told you that when you look directly into your dog's eyes, your brain reacts exactly the same way it does when you look at a human baby? Seriously, we are looking at a fascinating biological loophole today, one that quite literally changed the course of human history forever. You see, the relationship between you and that dog sleeping on your couch, it isn't just about companionship. It's actually built on a staggering evolutionary trick.
So why does your brain react to your dog exactly the same way it reacts to a human baby? I know, it sounds almost like an exaggeration, right? But it's entirely literal. Start with this mind-blowing fact. When you lock eyes with your dog, your brain doesn't just register, oh, friendly animal. It's instinctively programmed to respond with a powerful chemical rush, in the exact same way a parent responds to their newborn child.
The secret behind that rush is a biological mechanism you've probably heard of. It's oxytocin. This is the bonding hormone. It's essentially the chemical foundation of human family building. And over thousands of years, evolution literally shaped the dog's brain to tap into this exact chemical pathway. So when they stare at you, and you stare right back at them, both of your brains are releasing oxytocin. It's a mutual loop.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how unique this bond really is. Because think about it. If you try to lock eyes with a wild wolf, you are absolutely not getting a mutual oxytocin release. In fact, a wolf sees a prolonged stare as a direct threat. But your Labrador's loving stare, that is a mutual bonding event. It's an evolved emotional hack, not just some random quirky behavior they picked up.
Which brings us to those famous puppy dog eyes. Dogs actually evolved very specific facial muscles that wolves completely lack, by the way, just to make these expressions. Why? Well, because early humans were instinctively driven to care for animals that looked emotionally expressive and vulnerable. By tapping directly into our innate parental instincts, dogs secured our care, our food, and our protection. It's brilliant.
So how did this profound biological hack actually begin? Well, we need to rewind the clock. 30,000 years ago, the world was trapped in a brutal ice age. To really understand this bond, we have to look at where we started, out there in the freezing dark.
The stark contrast between where this started versus where we are now is honestly kind of hilarious when you think about it. Back then, you had Ice Age wolves. These were terrifying monsters to early humans. They had massive jaws, incredible endurance, and eyes perfectly adapted for hunting in the pitch black. Fast forward to today, and we have modern dogs. There are over 900 million of them worldwide. Sure, some are out there finding bombs or rescuing people from avalanches, but plenty of them are also just sitting next to cakes wearing little birthday hats.
But the absolutely crucial point to understand here is that dogs were created by accident. There was absolutely no master plan. No human tribe in the Ice Age sat down around a freezing campfire and just decided to invent a fluffy, fetch-playing companion.
Instead, the catalyst was just starvation and convenience. Early hunter-gatherers were incredibly messy eaters. They constantly left behind bones, skins, and partially eaten carcasses. Now, to a desperate wolf living in a brutal, frozen landscape, a human campfire was essentially a moving pile of free, easy calories. It was a total campfire magnet.
And this dynamic created a really fascinating evolutionary filter. First, the bold, curious wolves would approach the camp cautiously. Next, the hyper-aggressive ones, well, they'd get speared by terrified humans. Finally, the calmest, least fearful wolves would eat the scraps and survive. They didn't have to hunt dangerous prey anymore. They just had to tolerate being around humans.
Now, if you think wolves essentially turning themselves into dogs sounds unbelievable, scientists have actually watched this happen in real time. Enter Dmitry Belyaev. He was a Soviet geneticist who started this extraordinary experiment in Siberia back in 1959 using foxes, aiming to figure out exactly how domestication works.
Belyaev's method was incredibly simple. He didn't train the foxes, he didn't teach them any tricks whatsoever. Generation after generation, he simply selected the absolute tamest, least aggressive foxes, and he bred them. That was the one and only criteria: tameness.
What happened next was just astonishing, and it's known in biology as the domestication syndrome. As these foxes became less aggressive, their bodies automatically changed. They developed floppy ears, shortened snouts, patches of white fur, and wagging, curled tails. Belyaev proved that simply reducing aggression automatically alters an animal's physical appearance into something softer and much less intimidating. And this is exactly what happened to those ancient wolves hanging outside our camps.
So, what began silently at the edge of the firelight eventually turned into an active partnership, a true survival alliance. Both sides brought something critical to the table:
The proto-dogs became living alarm systems. They could smell predators and track prey far better than we ever could. In return, humans provided fire, warmth, and a stable food source. We literally helped each other survive the Ice Age.
And because of this incredible alliance, dogs claim a very, very special title. They are the very first domesticated animal in human history. They were sleeping right beside us long before we domesticated sheep or goats, long before we invented writing, built cities, or even discovered metal tools.
But their evolution didn't just stop in the Ice Age. When humans finally invented agriculture and started farming, our diets changed drastically to include way more grains. Well, dog biology literally adapted to match human progress. Their digestive systems evolved to break down starches far better than wolves ever could, entirely so they could stay right by our sides.
However, we do have to mention that domestication and modern human intervention have come with a cost. By intentionally breeding dogs for very specific physical traits, many modern breeds have lost the hardiness of their wild ancestors. Pugs often struggle to breathe, dachshunds can develop severe spinal issues, and bulldogs sometimes face complications giving birth naturally. It's a sobering consequence of just how heavily we have manipulated their genetics over the years.
Yet, despite all those centuries of selective breeding, the wild still lives inside them in the form of what we call shadows of the Ice Age. These are ancient instincts. Think about it. When a chihuahua circles before lying down, it's copying a wolf flattening tall grass. When a husky twitches in his sleep or starts howling, you are seeing the vestige of a wild predator surfacing right there in your living room.
When we trace this whole incredible journey, it really puts things into perspective. 40,000 years ago, it started with nothing but scraps at campfires, but jumped to 14,000 years ago in Germany. Archaeologists actually found a grave where a man and a woman were buried alongside a dog. And the wild part? The dog had been severely ill as a puppy, but survived for weeks or months, meaning those Ice Age humans spent precious, life-saving resources just nursing it. That's not a tool. That is attachment. And it leads directly to the present day, that mutual oxytocin emotional bond we share right now.
It all comes back to a simple, staggering realization. No master plan, just scraps beside a fire. This profound interspecies partnership wasn't engineered in any way. It was sparked by simple, cautious animals creeping closer in the freezing dark, and evolution slowly turning mutual fear into the greatest partnership in the history of our species.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. They hacked our parenting instincts. They changed their bodies and their brains just to survive off our campfires, securing a permanent place in our homes and our hearts. So, looking at the Ice Age predator currently sleeping on your couch, who really domesticated who? I hope this has completely changed how you look at your dog. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.